Can you all see that? Is that?
Do what?
Can you all see that up there?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, I can make it bigger if you need. Okay.
Can you
Well-
read it, Bill? I can see it.
Well, welcome to Faith Family United Church of Christ. That's not for you guys, for those guys. But we're studies in Luke, and we're in chapter 22, and we're going to finish up 22 and try to get a lot of 23 done today. We're starting in verse 63, the mocking of Jesus. And let me go ahead and do that since we're doing that. Zoom 200. Well, try it again. Zoom. Oh, shoot. 200. There. Is that bigger? Maybe not. Okay. So, can I get someone to go ahead and start reading for us?
Sure.
Okay.
The men who were guarding Jesus began mocking and beating him. They blindfolded him and demanded prophecy. Who hit you? And they said many other insulting things to him.
Okay, so the other day we were talking about this, and we mentioned that this is before he goes to Pilate, right? He was arrested. When Jesus was arrested, who was he arrested by? Do you know this?
I do, but I don't remember.
It's the temple guard. It's the Jewish guard of the temple.
Okay.
So they are the ones that arrested him. And he hasn't gone to trial yet. They've just got him. And so this is the Jewish guards that's insulting him. And one of the things that we want to point out here, that we know that it's the Jewish guards that are doing this, at least the Jewish people. They say prophesy. The Romans wouldn't have cared one way or the other. You know, they wouldn't have mocked him that way.
Okay.
But this is the Jewish temple guards, and they're mocking him, and they're asking him for a prophecy because they blindfolded him and was striking him. And so, anything else you see in that that jumps out at you?
Blindfolding him and striking him in the face.
Mm-hmm.
Well, he was supposed to be able to read people's minds. He's supposed to do all kinds of things.
Uh-huh.
We'll see if he can prophesy. You know, we don't. Back when they meet him in the Garden of Gethsemane, do they tell us who the guards are?
No.
I thought they did.
Maybe
I
maybe
don't
in it.
know.
See this is the thing, because of different the four different gospels. Sometimes we kind of blend some of the stories into each other, and it's not always that way. Let's see, betrayal, greatness, institute. Okay, Mount of Olives. Then he came to Mount of Olives. They followed him. He reached the place. Pray. Betrayal of Jesus while he was speaking. Suddenly a crowd came, and one with them. Just as a crowd came. Temple police. There it is. Yeah. In 51 and 52. Then Jesus said to the chief priests, the officer of the temple police. So, temple police or temple guard.
Temple guard.
Yeah, that's the ones that arrested.
Identifies that they're
Yeah,
the guards for the Sadducees and the Pharisees.
exactly, and we'll see that here in the next story. Okay, so the temple guards have him, and they're treating him pretty badly. Today we would call this waterboarding, maybe. Only they throw in the prophesy. Who hit you? Okay. So now Jesus is going to go before the council. Now, when the day came, the assembly of the elders of the people, both chief priests and scribes, gathered together and they brought him to their council. They said, "If you are the Messiah, the Christ, tell us." He replied, "If I tell you, you will not believe, and if I question you, you will not answer. But from now on, the Son of Man will be seated at the right hand of the power of God." And they asked him, "Are you then the Son of God?" He said to them, "You say I am." Then they said, "What further testimony do we need? We have heard it ourselves from his own lips." Chapter 22, verse right before 23. Yeah. Word 66. Okay. What's the first thing we notice? It's before the council. And who is the council?
Council of elders is what it says.
Council of elders,
chief
both
priest.
the chief priests and the scribes. Okay. So he's still in the Jewish hands right here. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else?
And they wanted to know if he was the Christ. Okay, we got you arrested. Are we wrong? Are you the Christ?
Does he say that he's the Christ?
No. Well, he does. It depends how much more to read.
What do you think? You think he tells them, "I am the Christ"?
No. Because he says, "You say that I am."
But he uses that word, ego, eimi, which means I am.
Okay.
That's the same word in the Old Testament. When Moses asked, "What's God's name?" he says, "I am who I am."
Okay, you're down at the bottom of the paragraph.
Yeah, it's down at the end there. They're asking him, "Are you the Christ? Are you the Messiah?" In the Jewish term, it would be Messiah. In the Greek term, it's Christ.
Okay.
It means the anointed one, the one that is to come from God. And he says, "You say I am."
Okay.
Fast forward to the Nicene times in 300 AD, they're arguing whether Christ is God or not.
Exactly.
And you can certainly point it out there.
Yeah, and you can see, then they said, "What further testimony do we need? We have heard it from his own lips." And I think in another gospel, they say that he blasphemed because he's calling himself the I am. And so that's all they need, right? They're ready. He says, if I tell you, you won't believe, and if I question you, you will not answer. So he said, you already made up your mind.
Right.
You know, and surely they have. They're just trying to catch him in his words, and they catch this word, the I am, and they said, that's it. Okay. Anything else in that you guys? Those are the two things that I picked out from that. The council is the council of the Jewish people. He hasn't gone to the Roman authorities yet, and he says, "You say I am," and they take that as he's claiming to be God himself. So. Any other questions? Okay. So, check this out. I like this. We'll read the next story. Oh, I can't do it that way. We'll read the next
And the
one.
whole assembly rose
Yep.
and led him. Who else wants to read?
Here you go. Hold on a second. Here you go.
Then the whole assembly rose and led him off to Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, "We have found this man subverting our nation. He opposes payment of the taxes to Caesar and claims to be Christ, a king." So Pilate asked Jesus, "Are you the king of the Jews?" "Yes, it is as you say," Jesus replied. Then Pilate announced to the chief priests and the crowd, "I find no basis for a charge against this man." But they insisted. He stirs up the people all over Judea by his teaching. He started in Galilee and has come all the way here.
Okay.
On hearing this, Pilate asked if the man was a Galilean.
Let's stop right there for a second. So, what are they accusing him? They now the Jews are taking him before Pilate. Pilate's the Roman governor of the area, the Roman that's in charge. It's under military law, so he's in charge of all the military and everything. So he's in charge of Judea, and they say this man is doing what?
He's causing problems.
It says perverting our nation. I think there was a really
stirring up unrest.
Subverting our nation.
That's subverting. Is in the RSV it uses the word perverting, and the word is to cause someone to believe something that is quite different. In other words, he's teaching not what we teach. We teach the law, and he's teaching actions coming from your heart. And because you got to remember, Jesus told the story of the Good Samaritan. Now, the Good Samaritan, of course, being from Samaria, he was an enemy of the Jews, right? But yet he took care of the Jew that was beaten and robbed, right? And who passed by? A priest, didn't do anything to him. A Levite, which is from the priestly, he could have been a priest, but he's from that lineage and both of them didn't help him. Now, it's not to their disadvantage or their evilness that they didn't help him, because if they would have helped him, they would have had to touch him, lift him up, carry him, and if he died, now they're unclean. And they have to go through this whole ceremonial washing and everything. So they avoided that because that's their laws according to the Old Testament laws. So Jesus says, no, you need to do what is right. Do what comes from your heart. Have compassion, right? And so he is turning their law, their religion, kind of upside down. So, in a way, subverting, that's one way to say it. Perverting, is another way. But he's changing our rules and the way we do things. Okay, what's the other thing that he's doing? That he says he's forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor. Is this true?
No.
We have the story of Peter asking him if it's okay to pay taxes to Caesar, and he says, "Show me a coin, give to Caesar what is Caesar's." And if that wasn't enough, he also told them to go fishing, and they catch a fish, and in the fish's mouth there's coin, and that's to pay their taxes. So this is a complete lie. So they brought in false charges against him. Okay, and then there's one more thing. It says saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king. Is this true?
In what sense? Is he the Messiah, or he says he's the Messiah?
Yes.
Well, which are you asking?
Well, that's what I'm saying. That's what they're accusing him of saying that he is the Messiah, the Christ, the King.
Well, they're right.
Yes, but he turned it around and said, "You say that I am."
I know.
He hasn't said it yet.
No, he hasn't. But here's the thing. Why is that such a big charge? Who can appoint a king at this point?
Were they elected by the people?
No.
No, they were appointed.
By Caesar.
Okay.
So anybody that had any kind of political power, you could say, like the Herods, they were in power because Rome or Caesar allowed them to be in power.
Okay.
They could just say, "You're no longer in power." So by saying this guy claims to be the king, and nobody's put him in power. So all the things they're saying is supposed to get him in trouble with Rome.
Okay.
Not
They
necessarily.
have to justify their actions
Exactly.
to Rome because they do not have the power to kill Jesus.
Exactly.
They can't kill anybody.
Yeah. That's the other thing, right? Rome has the power to give life or take life,
And reserve that.
and they can only bring him before Pilate and try to get him condemned to death. So Pilate he looks at him and he examines him. He asks him some questions, and what's his reply? What's Pilate's reply? I find no basis.
I find no fault in this man.
Exactly. No, why are you bringing? Basically these are trumped up charges. Basically he's ready to get rid of him. But then they say that he's been doing this throughout Judea, and he came from Galilee, where he began in the first place, right? So he began in Galilee, and that's when Pilate asks, and this is the start of the next story, is he a Galilean? Now this is important because Herod, I'm not sure which Herod this is, but Herod has jurisdiction over Galilee.
Right.
So now Pilate's like, here's my buck, and I'm passing it to you. So Pilate's found a way to, basically, we talk about Pilate washing his hands later on. We talk about during the second before Pilate, the second time before Pilate, he washes his hands and said, he's not my responsibility. Here, he just kind of passed the buck. And so he sends him to Herod to be tried. But here's the thing. Herod's not in Galilee. Guess what? Surprise, surprise. Herod just happens to be in Jerusalem. So they send him to Herod. Okay, so here we go. I'll read this next part here. Ready? Okay.
When Pilate heard this, he asked whether the man was a Galilean 7, and when he learned that he was under Herod's jurisdiction, he sent him off to Herod, who was himself in Jerusalem at that time 8. When Herod saw Jesus, he was very glad, for he had been wanting to see him for a long time, because he had heard about him and was hoping to see him perform some sign. 9. He questioned him at some length, but Jesus gave him no answer. 10. The chief priests and the scribes stood by, vehemently accusing him. 11. Even Herod with his soldiers treated him with contempt and mocked him. Then he put an elegant robe on him, and sent him back to Pilate. 12. That same day Herod and Pilate became friends with each other. Before this they had been enemies.
So I thought
the
that.
slowest you can put it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I could.
Did you not hear that?
Was a waste of time.
I kind of already read it before I heard you read it.
Yeah, I have to have it quick like that. But anyway, so Pilate sends him to Herod, and Herod just happened to be in Jerusalem at the time, and Herod actually wanted to see Jesus because he's heard about these signs, these miracles that he's been performing, and he was hoping to see one of them. And he questioned him at length, and Jesus gave him no answer. The chief priests and all they're hollering and screaming, just get rid of him. He's a troublemaker, blah blah blah. And notice again, even Herod, with his soldiers, treated him with contempt and mocked him. So Herod's soldiers now are mocking him as well. And here we go. And they put an elegant robe on him and sent him back to Pilate. And so isn't that something? you're a rich and powerful person, and what do you want? You want to see this person that's doing all these miracles. You want to see, if you can figure out how he's doing them, or.
But they also want to keep their power over.
Oh,
him.
most definitely, most definitely. So that, and I think that's part of the mocking,
Right.
and the having contempt for him. But what does Herod do?
Send it back to Pilate.
Sends him back. He says, "I don't want anything to do with this here," And here's the thing. Before Jesus, about 400 years before Jesus, we don't have it in our Bibles, but there's books called the Maccabees, and it talks about a rebellion that the Jewish people had, the clan, the family of the Maccabees, stirred up the people and started a revolt. They were going to eject Rome from Jerusalem and all their area that they were their homeland, and it didn't end well with them. Okay, so they were basically but there was so much bloodshed and so much. It cost so much to quell this rebellion that the people like Pilate were afraid, because if they have another uprising like that, then he's probably going to lose his job. Herod, even though he's Jewish himself, has an uprising like that, he's probably going to lose his position. So they don't really want anything to do with this.
It wasn't 400 years. It was like 150.
Oh, I'm sorry.
years.
You're right. You're right.
Like
I was thinking Malachi, the last.
But
yeah.
it's in their mind that there's a whole movement going on, and Rome wants order.
Yes.
So the people in power that are controlling the Jews, which are the Jews, Romans have been sure of that.
Mm-hmm.
We have a tendency to think it's the Romans that control, and they really don't. The Jews have to control their own people, and that's where they're making sure.
And there's something else that's happening at this time, and that's the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome. And how does the peace of Rome work?
If Rome, if you're part of the Roman Empire, you are defended by the Roman army.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that's basically how it works.
Okay, and if you're not,
you're
squashed.
Well, Rome's probably going to squash you.
Exactly.
You can. But you won't get squashed if you're part of the peace. The peace is there because Rome won't invade you. And people fought to get into the Roman Empire.
And that's something that they call friends of Rome or friends of Caesar. That means that you basically fall in love with the chief, which is Caesar, and all the what Rome has to dictate to you. If you don't agree with that, you were removed from office, you were no longer a friend, and you were basically just pushed aside. And so Rome keeps its peace, but what about the people that disagree? What about when Rome comes in and says, we're going to make you worship Caesar as a god?
Yeah, they won't do it.
You see there? What happens when, I can't think of his name. I'm just having a brain fart right now. The Roman general comes in and decides to sacrifice a pig on the altar in Rome.
Diocletian.
You see here? That happened actually before that too. But anyway, you see what I'm saying? You don't get to say anything about it because we got peace. And if you want to say something about it, we're going to squash you. And we're going to have peace without you. So that's the mindset here. And the officials, especially Herod, since he was a Jew, he said, go back to Herod, or go back to Pilate. Yeah, kind of a Jew. But anyway, so
one thing can I
go ahead.
throw in? the entire society of the Middle East valued order very much. They didn't want any kind of movement that would upset their daily routine and lives. And this included in their religion. And this was what the Bible teaches us, that all of the commandments and everything else were leading up to order, keep order. Everything, all the commandments and laws of Moses and everything, direct, if you follow them, the culture will have order. And that was very big in the Middle East.
Yes.
Now we interpret that today differently. You got to think of it as what happened back then.
Okay. So, Jesus sentenced to death. Pilate then called together the chief priests, the leaders, and the people, and said to them, "You brought this man as one who was perverting the people, and here I have examined him in your presence, and have not found this man guilty of any of your charges against him. Neither has Herod, for he sent him back to us. Indeed, he has done nothing to deserve death. I will therefore have him flogged and released." Then they shouted all together, "Away with this fellow! Release Barabbas for us." This was a man who had been put in prison for an insurrection that had taken place in the city and for murder. Pilate wanted to release Jesus, addressed them again, but they kept shouting, "Crucify, crucify him." A third time he said to them, "Why? What evil has he done? I found him no ground for the sentence of death. I will therefore have him flogged and then release him." But they kept urgently demanding with loud shouts that he should be crucified, and their voices prevailed. So Pilate gave his verdict that their demand should be granted. He released the man they asked for, the one who had been put in prison for insurrection and murder, and they handed Jesus over to as they wished, over to them as they wished. So you can see here they're getting kind of vocal here, right? And so he hands them. He does what they want. What does Pilate want to do?
Wants to wash his hands of it.
Basically, right? He says, "Here, I'll have him beaten and released." And they say, "No. We want Barabbas, who's an insurrectionist." Isn't that interesting?
How did that even get brought up?
Well, in the other Gospels, you can see where they said Pilate wants to release to do a favor for the Jews,
Okay.
and so he says, "Would I release Barabbas,
Okay.
who's a murderer, or Jesus?" And they say they want Barabbas.
I believe that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But Herod didn't find anything wrong with him. I find nothing wrong with him. And then a third time he says, "I see nothing wrong with this. He doesn't deserve death, but they're calling for his death." What evil has he done? I think that's the most important thing. What evil has he done? You know that when I was in Bible college, before I went to seminary, I was stoutly against the LGBTQ community. I believed what the Bible said, that the Bible said that it's a sin and it's wrong and all this other stuff. And I believed that. And then one day I'm sitting at my dinner room table, and can't remember what the conversation was, but that came up. And my daughter, I had all 6 kids there at the time. My daughters should have seen the table. There was a rule at our house that you passed the food. You didn't reach. If someone reached across your table or your plate, you had the right to stab them with your fork. That only happened once, okay? but anyway, with 6 people at a big table, you have to be organized. So you always passed it clockwise. So, okay. So anyway, we're sitting there and we're talking, and for some reason that topic came up, homosexuality. And it's wrong. And of course, I got some pushback from my children. And my daughter said to me, she says, what business is it of you who someone, she didn't say love, but something to that effect. What business is you what someone else does with their life? And it's like, if it's not affecting me, then why should I? And so that kind of started me on a path to where I am. It's about 16 or 17.
Okay.
And so I was like, isn't that something? And here's the same thing. Jesus is teaching them how people can worship God with their spirit and not with just going through, okay, I did this. Look at me, I'm good, God loves me, and not taking care of the people around them. And you can see this after Jesus is gone. You can see this in the writings, in the epistles, that this is his teaching, that we need to take care of each other, especially in the teachings of James in his letter. He says, how can you love God who you can't see, but yet you hate your brothers, who you right there in front of you, And so that's what Jesus is teaching. But yet, what does that do? That takes away these religious leaders' power, and it gives it back to the people, because the people are taking care of the people, and the religious leaders are saying, you got to do God, 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 and yet you're not taking care of the people. You're hating people. You're hating each other, and so that all stems from why? What evil has he done? I love The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The guy that wrote it is called Douglas Adams. It's a great series of books. He talks about the end of the earth because they're building a space highway, so they have to destroy the earth to make room for the highway. That's pretty funny itself. Anyway, he says this girl finally clicked on her, and she said how she could explain how everyone could live in a paradise right before, of course, the planet is destroyed. But she said he prefaced it by saying some 2,000 years ago, when a man was nailed to a tree because he said, wouldn't it be nice for everyone to get along? This Douglas Adams is a true atheist. He doesn't believe in any religion, doesn't believe in God. But yet, for him, an atheist to say, point to Jesus and say, he was nailed to a tree, he was crucified, because he said, wouldn't it be nice if everyone got along? And I think that what evil has he done? What evil has he done? He's challenged the powers to be. So, anybody else have anything from that? I talked a lot there. I'm sorry.
Well, they're talking about heresy for them.
For them.
Yeah. So it would be evil.
But why is it heresy?
Because it's not what they teach.
But they teach.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. I think that's the point there. Yep, I got it. So, okay, we'll stop there. We'll start at 26 next week, and hopefully we'll get through to chapter 24 at the end of the next week.